Assalamualaikum to our lecturer, Dr. Sheikh Saad. My name is Abdul Basim Mustafa and I will become the first presenter. Beside me, these are my team members who will join me in explaining question 1A and also question 3. Before the computation of the goodwill or bargain purchase, my team and I have extracted some of the key information from the question given that will be used in calculating the goodwill or bargain purchase for Good Berhad and also Excel Berhad. For Good Berhad, Great Berhad has acquired about 75% of the ordinary share. The cash consideration is at amount of 960 million. Next, pre-return profit is at 100 million. Pre-asset revaluation reserve is at 108 million. And last but not least, on 31st December 2021, the goodwill has been impaired about 10%. This is the computation of goodwill or bargain purchase for Good Berhad. After deducting impairment by 10%, the goodwill amount is at Rm 14.85 million, and this figure will be transferred into statement of financial position. Next, let's take a look at Excel Berhad. First of all, Great Berhad has acquired about 60% of the ordinary share and also 45 million of debentures. Besides that, cash consideration is being recorded at 322.5 million, pre-return profit is at 72 million, and pre-asset revaluation reserve is at 117 million. Lastly, land has been recognized as undervalue at amount of 3 million. Now, let's proceed with the computation of the goodwill or bargain purchase for Excel Berhad. The cash consideration will be added with non-controlling interest before deducting with fair value net asset on DOA of subsidiary. The amount of the goodwill will be Rm 27.3 million, and this figure will be transferred into statement of financial position. Without further ado, I will pass this presentation to my next team members.
Thank you, Masid. Now, I'm Nunus Ratina will present to you on how to calculate goodwill or bargain purchase on the acquisition of Good Berhad. Big Berhad had accrued 60 million out of 75 million of ordinary share of Good Berhad on 1st January 2021. The percentage of the control of Big Berhad is 80%, while the non-controlling interest is 20%. As a Great Berhad direct controlling towards Big Berhad, therefore it has indirect controlling towards Good Berhad. This is a vertical group structure between Great, Big and Good. Indirect control exists when the holding company has indirect control through its subsidiaries. To calculate the amount of indirect control of Great Berhad towards Big Berhad, we need to multiply the percentage of control of Great Berhad towards Big Berhad with the percentage of control of Big Berhad towards Good Berhad. Therefore, 75% times with 80%, we will get 60%. So the percentage of indirect control is 60% and the non-controlling interest is 40%. As is mentioned, it has indirect control. So to calculate the indirect consideration transfer, we need to multiply the percentage of control acquired by Great Berhad towards Big Berhad with the cash consideration of 180 million ringgit that settled by Big Berhad when acquired Good Berhad. Therefore, we will need to multiply 75% with 180 million, then we will get 135 million that will be put under the goodwill column. The 25% of non-controlling interest also will multiply with 180 million and we will get 45 million and put under the NCI column. Next, to calculate the amount of NCI that will be added with the amount of indirect CT, we need to multiply the percentage of NCI for indirect controlling, which is 40%, with the fair value of the net asset of subsidiary at date of acquisition as the company using the partial goodwill. The fair value of the net asset of subsidiary at DOA consists of ordinary share capital, pre-return profit, pre-asset revaluation reserve and amount of revaluation that happened during the date of acquisition. The amount of ordinary share capital can be taken at a SOFP of Good Berhad amounting to 300 million. For the pre-return profit and pre-asset revaluation reserve can be taken from the statement of change in equity of Good Berhad. The pre-RP and pre-ARR are the amount that we need to take into consideration before the acquisition takes place. As the acquisition takes place on 1st January 2021, the amount before 1st January 2021 is considered as pre-acquisition. Therefore, the amount of pre-ARR and pre-RP is 24 million and 59.7 million respectively. For the amount of revaluation that happened during the date of acquisition, it stated that on the date of acquisition, the fair value of freehold land had exceeded its carrying value amounting to 1.6 million. Thus, it made the freehold land under value. Therefore, we need to add back the amount of 1.6 million by debiting the PPE freehold land and crediting ARR 1.6 million. The amount of ARR 1.6 million will be included in the fair value of the net asset of subsidiary as this revaluation happened during the date of acquisition. The revaluation during the year will not be included in the calculating the amount of goodwill or bargain purchase. It will be treated at the OCI. The amount of fair value of subsidiary at DOA is 175.3 million after editing 300 million, which 59.7 million, 24 million, and 1.6 million. This amount will be used to calculate the NCI by multiply it with 40% as mentioned earlier. The amount of NCI of 70.12 million will be put at the column of goodwill and NCI. The amount of fair value of the net asset at DOA need to be deducted in arriving the amount of goodwill. To calculate either goodwill or bargain purchase, we need to add the 135 million with 70.12 million and deduct it with 175.3 million and get 29.82 million. As the amount we get is positive, thus it is goodwill. There is no impairment of goodwill during the year. Therefore, the amount of goodwill 29.82 million will be transferred to the consolidated statement of financial position. So, that's all from me. Now, I will pass my presentation to Hana Nabila to explain for the next topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nur Nusratina. Now, let's move on to question number 3, which is the accounting treatment for acquisition of Kendall Berhad on 1st January 2018. For this question, Hendrik Berhad had acquired 80% of Kendall's Berhad share on 1st January 2018. The acquisition was settled through shares exchange. On the date of acquisition, Kendall's land has a fair value of Rm 1.5 million in excess of its carrying value. First, let's calculate the goodwill or bargain purchase for this acquisition. The consideration transferred is Rm 33.75 million, where 3 over 2 multiplied by Rm 1 ringgit and 50 cent multiplied by 15 million shares in Kendall. The NCI is calculated using partial goodwill method, so we get 5.2 million of amount NCI. Next, the added amount of consideration transferred and NCI must be deducted with the fair value of net assets of the subsidiary of Rm 26 million. We get the amount of goodwill of Rm 12.95 million. Since there is an impairment of goodwill of Rm 800,000, the net goodwill will be Rm 12.15 million. Next, let's move on to the accounting treatment. On 1st January 2018, Hendrik Berhad had acquired 80% shares of Kendall Berhad, making Kendall a subsidiary to Hendrik. On the date of acquisition, Hendrik Berhad acquired the shares by shares exchange, where Hendrik issued 3 shares for every 2 shares in Kendall. Therefore, the amount of 33.75 million will be recognized as the consideration transferred on the date of acquisition from Hendrik to Kendall. Next, the NCI amount is Rm 5.2 million will also need to be recognized in the consolidated statement of financial position. This amount is also included in the calculation of goodwill and bargain purchase. On the date of acquisition, there is an excess in the fair value of land of Kendall amounting to Rm 1.5 million. This amount will be recognized as the gain on revaluation of land on DOA and will be included as the fair value of net asset of subsidiary on DOA to determine the goodwill. This amount will also need to be added to the amount of PPE in the consolidated statement of financial position. Therefore, on 31st December 2020, the amount of goodwill is Rm 12.15 million need to be recognized in the consolidated statement of financial position as non-current asset after deducting the impairment of Rm 800,000. Since the company is using partial goodwill method, the full amount of the impairment, which is Rm 800,000, need to be recognized by deducting this amount from the retained profit of Hendrik Berhad. I think that is all from me. I will pass the presentation to Nur Alisa Adli. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Hana Nabila, for the thorough explanations on the accounting treatment of Hendrik. My name is Nur Alisa Adli Mafizal, and I'll be presenting the next questions on determining the gain or loss on disposal of the share for Hendrik Berhad. Due to the fact that the acquisition did not turn out to be as successful as expected, Hendrik has reached to the conclusion that it is in the best interest to sell off 85% of its equity shareholding in Candle. As a consequence, the subsidiary will be converted to a simple investment. During the disposal of the share, it was stated, first, the fair value of net asset was 35 million, second, the Candle's loss at the end of the year was 8 million, and lastly, the fair value of the remaining share was 10 million. Without further ado, let's go on to the next step, which is to calculate the gain or loss from disposal. When comparing on how to calculate gain or loss on disposal of sub to sub and sub to simple investment, the primary distinction is that when calculating gain or loss on disposal, sub to simple investment is required to write off any remaining goodwill that was calculated during the acquisition of the share. It is also required to add the fair value of share retained over the proceeds received. To begin, we need to add the proceeds that we received with the share's fair value that was retained. We can both get the figures from the question. The next step is to subtract the subsidiary fair value at the time of its disposal. It was stated that the fair value of the asset is 35 million. This sum will be subtracted with the loss incurred for the year. And since the disposal was take place in the midst of the year, we need to add the 8 million between the months of June and December. The sum that we get, which is 31 million, will be multiplied by the percentage of the initial acquisition portion, which was 80%. As I mentioned before, since it is a subsidiary to a simple investment, the goodwill derived from the computation of goodwill during the acquisition, which was 12.15 million, will be written off. As a result of this, we were able to realize a loss in disposal amounted to 950,000. This amount is going to be taken to consolidated our statement profit or loss. And that's all from my end. I'll pass this presentation to Aiman Haziq.
Hi, my name is Muhammad Haziq bin Zamri, and I will explain the question 3C regarding the effect of implementing the plan on the group financial statement as at 31 December 2021. Due to the disposal of 85% of the equity shareholding, Hendrik Berhad control percentage over Candle will decrease from 80% to 12%. Since the control is less than 20%, it will be considered as a simple investment. Thus, Hendrik Berhad will not recognize Candle Berhad as a subsidiary anymore. As a result, Hendrik Berhad will not have any control over Candle Berhad. Hence, Hendrik Berhad will not have to prepare a consolidated financial statement as at 31 December 2021. Hendrik Berhad will also need to use an equity method to record simple investment of Candle Berhad as its carrying value as a non-current asset. Another effect on the group financial statement as at 31 December 2021 will be the carrying value of fair value net asset decreased from 35 million to 9 million. Furthermore, Hendrik Berhad goodwill will be rated against gain or loss on disposal. For the non-controlling interest, it will increase from 20% to 88%. Loss of disposal of RM 950,000 will be recognized in statement of profit or loss. Lastly, Hendrik Berhad will only record dividend income from Candle Berhad in its financial statement according to the proportion of controlling interest. And that will be the end of our group presentation video. Thank you for watching.